This is Sporting Life.
Well, welcome along to the Sporting Life Racing Podcast. David Hall, joined by Fran Berry, Graham Cunningham and Ed Taylor. We're going to look back on Aintree and Maidan. A little look ahead to the weekend as well. Ed, we need to start with the Randox Grand National on Saturday. I always think a decent judge of these things is how you feel when you get into the car and drive home on the Saturday evening. What was going through your mind, Ed, as you pointed the car south?
Gosh, that I've got a long journey ahead, and GC will know what it's like post Grand National television show. You're just completely frazzled, genuinely frazzled. It's hard to explain, and it's much harder than anything else I do, much harder than any Soccer Saturday I presented, any football program I've ever presented. Presenting the Grand National is a huge honour. You know, only 8 people have done it on terrestrial TV, but it's also really difficult. So your head is full of scrambled egg, to be honest, when you come off air, and a million things going through your mind. I was thinking, what a great job they've done at Aintree. John Pullen with that ground, having had not a drop of rain for whatever it was, 3 weeks, I thought was fairly remarkable. Dick and White had done a great job in putting on a fabulous show, which I'm sure we'll come to. Cheltenham takes so much criticism, yet Aintree, for me, doesn't get enough praise for its crowds and the show it puts on. I was hoping those 2 horses were okay, obviously, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But obviously, I'm focused on the ITV show and how it's gone, and you don't really know because your head is all over the place. I aim with an ITV Grand National show to have plenty of nostalgia, to try and make people feel young again. You know, the Champions music, the VTs we've done. Daryl Jacob had done a lovely piece with intense raffles for us. I thought Alice with the horses before the race was simply sensational. She was sensational on Channel 4. She's amazing for us. Matt's interviews will live long in the memory with Sir Alex Ferguson, I thought was brilliant. And then his interview with Willie Mullins when Willie Mullins cracked was great TV, really. And I thought it was a really good Grand National. I hadn't looked at social media or anything like that. I thought it was a really good Grand National. I enjoyed it far more than I did a couple of years ago when I sat in the car and felt horrendous, if I'm honest. In 2017, I actually felt horrendous having presented my first Grand National. I hadn't got anything like the way I expected it to go, and then we won an award for it. But on Saturday, I felt pretty good about the whole thing, really.
Let's talk about viewing figures. They've come through. What's your reaction? Is the National in decline as something for the TV audience?
Yes and no. Yes and no. On the face of it, 5.3, which isn't a consolidated figure, because these days you consolidate it eventually with digital and everything else that happens in a modern day television audience. On the face of it, 5.3 is really disappointing where you think of where the Grand National was, and you've got to take it on the chin, and you've got to accept it. It is a problem for me, and I've said it for a long time. You know, our successes in the 8 years we've done it and been the custodians of the rights have been the Cheltenham Festival, have been Royal Ascot, have been York, have been Goodwood and other big meetings. The problems for me have been the Derby and the Grand National. We've spoken about it often here. The days of those big audiences, for one, are gone. And secondly, both races don't resonate like they used to. The Grand National, let's face it isn't the race it was. To quote Bruff Scott, brilliant piece in the Times and the piece he did for the opening show, the Grand National is not the race it was, but it's what it is now that matters. And listen, I can go on and explaining the audience. It's very straightforward, really, in the sense that our biggest audience was 9.6 million in 2019, I think that was. And the share of the audience is bigger now than it was then. So the Grand National is still hugely popular. The problem we have is that not enough people are at home watching TV. And why would they be? The first Saturday of the school holidays, and it's blazing sunshine. We had 40% viewer share for the show, 60% for the Grand National. You'd take that all day long. Back in the day, that would have equated to an enormous audience already, but these are very different times.
Can I come in on that?
Jason.
I'm baffled by one element of this. The fact is that terrestrial audience for the National is pretty much almost halved in less than a decade. Cheltenham figures were so strong, really strong, and so we simply have to conclude that the race is losing its appeal with a huge section of the public. I don't need to touch on certain aspects, but there's one point I want to touch on again. I've touched on it before, happy to do so again. A significant number of media people, you know who you are, lads, think it's absolutely right to ignore a significant news story here. And I think I know why they do it, because they know that ITV racing, terrestrial racing, is the last chopper out of Saigon for horse racing. And if that chopper goes down, they go down. I firmly believe that's the reason they ignore this. Lewis Porteous in the Racing Post did a story. The number was in the last paragraph of a story of about 18 to 20 pars. Very few people have touched on it. I wonder why that is. I think I know, for reasons just outlined.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that. I just think, then what do you think about the FA Cup final? Because the FA Cup final is probably the one big national event you compare, and that viewing number suffers just like we do. And it's
rugby doesn't. Rugby doesn't. Six Nations doesn't. That's held up extremely well. I don't know why the national doesn't resonate like it used to. I have tuned out to a certain extent, not because of this, just because I cannot, and this will lead us into the next area, I can't abide the narrative of fatality-free race, triumph, and one death, disaster. And I just can't square that. And for that reason, I stayed at home and watched it. And by the way, I watched the race and I enjoyed it. I thought it was dramatic. I thought it was incident-packed. Thought it felt more like an Old National. But bizarrely, and you shouldn't make light of these things, it took a while for all the pieces to fall into place. But after a couple of days, every single clan involved in the National, pro and anti, seemed to get pretty much what they were looking for. Great weather, buzzing atmosphere, pulsating race, great storyline, dad and lad, poignant angle with the winning owner having lost his wife. And then a little more than 48 hours later, here comes the winning jockey getting an 8-day whip ban, and a horse dies because he's been driven to the point of exhaustion. That is the modern day National in a nutshell. And there's one more thing I want to mention. I came home on Friday night and watched Northwest Tonight, the BBC local news show at 6:30, and a lady called Judy Hobson, a former trainee jockey apparently, introduces her report with, "No fatalities today, thank goodness." And my heart sank. You're a BBC correspondent who's not meant to editorialize. And that's where we are with this race now. It's a great occasion. It was a spectacular race in many respects, but it's in strife if a BBC correspondent can begin her report with no fatalities today, thank goodness.
And that leads us into some of the criticism that came ITV's way and Aintrey's way for the lack of updates on Broadway Boy and Celeb Dalen immediately after the race. How do you respond to that?
I hold my hands up to a certain extent, Audie. I wish in hindsight, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, that I'd just given an update sooner that will let you know as soon as we know anything. I'm totally in the hands of the Jockey Club with that for updates. I knew nothing. I wish, when I watched it back, I wish I'd just said something afterwards to say, we'll let you know about jockeys and horses as soon as we get that information. I probably got too wrapped up. The way it worked for me is I got very wrapped up in the Mullins story, the Nick Rocket story, the Stuart Andrews story, the Sadie Andrews story, and then getting to a break. And then I was in charge of the presentation down on the track. I wish I'd said something just as a holding message in hindsight. I normally would. I'm not quite sure why I didn't. And I should have done. I hold my hands up. Ollie actually did during the replay. And then once I had the information from the Jockey Club, the update on the two horses, I read it out immediately. I can't speculate. I can't do anything like that. I've got to be sensible these days and do it that way. In hindsight, I wish I'd done just that holding message, probably would have been better. But there's an awful lot. It's very difficult to explain everything that is going on in my earpiece, the storylines, what's happening, getting to the break, and so on and so forth. It all happens very quickly. There's a lot going on. But in hindsight, I wish I'd just given a holding message and then said, I'll update people when I can. I can't do any more than that. And you give the information when it's ready and accurate. That's really, really important these days.
I think to me, it's very, very clear. The death of Celebra Dalen and the way that came about is far, far more damaging for racing than any fall fatality. Don't know what you lads think about that. But one thing I was encouraged about, I was listening to LBC, Nick Ferrari's show this morning, and Culture Secretary and Wigan MP Haydock is, very close to where she is. Lisa Nandy was on. Two quotes I dragged out. Horse racing brings joy to millions of people. There has to be a good future for horse racing, stressing the way that horses are cared for, that welfare standards have improved. I was quite encouraged by that, but this contest has become an annual political football, just another little punchline in the culture war, and it depresses me, to be honest.
How much of that, GC? I think one of my best moves, I'm not on Twitter, formerly X, anymore. It's not worth my while. And imagine I'd looked at that after the race and seen what was going on there. I probably would have speculated and done something I shouldn't have done. Your stuff about Northwest BBC worries me. I haven't been asked to do anything. Normally, like after the protests and after certain things, I'm asked to go on all sorts of different shows and represent racing. I've had nothing post this race. I thought it was a really good national. I know social media, there's all sorts of wars been going on, and I'm sure there's still going on now. How much do you think that is part of it? And how much do you think is big picture?
I think the race has become a bit too hot to handle for some influential bodies. I think that's why ITV don't promote it in a very, very strong way across their various platforms. I think the race has just become too political for a lot of people. I'm speculating there, but there's a reason that number is coming down year on year, and that's one of them.
Fran, it was the first time in ages you weren't at Aintree. You were watching fresh from Dundalk on the Friday night. What did you make of the 2025 Randox Grand National?
Yeah, look, Dave, take all the political things out of it. As a spectacle, I was in Ballystown Racecourse evening meeting there. There was a good crowd. An east wind did go through you despite the sun, but any racecourse that was there was on the bank at the back at Parade Ring looking at the race. I looked at it on the big screen, and for what that 9 minutes the race takes, effectively 9 minutes and 6 seconds, nobody was speaking. It's still got that enthrallment. I know it's changed in every way, shape and form from what we knew it used to be, but visually for the non-hardened racecourse, it still is a good spectacle. And obviously when you're an Irish racecourse and you see Irish horses fighting out to finish, there was a good cheer for the eventual winner, and more so maybe the second, I Maximus, who I think was very popular in the market as well. And the result, the emotion from Willie Mullins that we see with Patrick, something that we don't see with Willie. He's a little bit of an Iceman, isn't he? He's a cool customer. The whole occasion really got to him, and I think that lifted the result as much as anything else. The way the race developed for the horse, the way he went in, he was a big drifter on the anti-post market as well. Interesting, given his Bobby Joe win, a Testis win. He did bomb out in Irish Grand National last year. Maybe that was a factor, but it was had a lot going on from afar, from where we were at least. And you're probably dealing with two different cultures, between the Irish culture and the English culture as regards animal welfare, and the way that's taken into account in Ireland and England. Not saying we don't take it any less seriously, but it's dealt with in a different manner, and it's not as politically at this stage of the Irish psyche, if you like. It's not as big an issue, thankfully, at this stage. But normally what happens over the other side of the Irish Sea can become an issue 5 and 10 years down the line. So it's something we all got to bear in mind as well, and how you protect the sport.
You see that immediate aftermath, that instant Willie Mullins reaction on ITV when he couldn't speak. That for me was the defining moment of Grand National Day. We've never seen that before.
I absolutely loved it. I really did. Am I right in thinking Patrick is Willie and Jackie's only child?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've got one son, and I've watched him play sport, and there's absolutely nothing like him. I'm sort of gagging a little as I speak. I cannot imagine watching your only son excel on a stage like that. And I thought it was spellbinding telly. Chapman did a really great job. There you go, Matt. He's always pulling me up for having a little pop at him. He did a great job. He handled that with real sensitivity and good timing and good humour. But I thought take all the politics out of it, as Fran said, and look at that. It was wonderful telly for a wonderful achievement. And that dad and lad angle, it plays so strongly, parent and child, Jackie as well, that family angle. And we'll come on to the the vastness of the achievement, to have all those horses in with every chance coming to the last. So I thought that was the moment of the meeting by far, and it will take a lot of topping for the moment of the season.
Ned, we were saying that the National needed romance back. It's an unlikely source in a way that the biggest superpower the sport's ever seen brings it back for us. But that moment did. That was just human, wasn't it? It wasn't racing. That was just, GC said, father and son.
And the race needed it. Let's be honest. The race needed a bit of that romance back in it. And yeah, it felt like that provided it. I mean, the father and son angle, as GC explained so well, was great. But the owner as well. I mean, my goodness, the story there with the wife having had her, is it first communion, Fran? The way it works,
yeah.
First communion with Willie. I mean, and then sending the horse to him, and her losing her battle with cancer. And honestly, it was extraordinary. Really, raw emotion. It was pretty special to be there and experience that. And Mullins' achievement, I describe it as Dickinson-esque. Then you could argue it was just extraordinary. And what might have happened if Manella Kakuna's saddle hadn't slipped? I mean, it's frightening, really. I mean, the whole week was frightening from a Mullins point of view when you think that was his second team dominating Grade Ones.
Yeah,
it's terrifying, really. The elite are being saved for Punchestown, and he was absolutely rampant with his second string. I mean, the Topham was just bonkers how he won that with Gentleman to Me. And then he just completely dominated the Grand National. You have to absolutely marvel at it, but it's also really scary.
Fran, what was the reaction in Ireland to Willie's emotion? Because he was barely saying anything, just the odd word here and there, but I could sense that he was thinking about his own parents as well, wishing, that they could have been there so that everyone could have been present. Of course, that's not possible as people get older, but there was something spectacular about the whole aura around that few minutes.
It really was. When you see Willie Gold Cup's previous Grand Nationals, he's so got it together, doesn't he, Graham? And, he's dignified, win or lose. There's a great clip of him when Lossiemouth was going to win, obviously, the hurl early in the week, and he was looking back to see how Constitution Hill was midway through the race. I thought that was great feeling. I think it was the ITV cameras as well, Ed, but I saw it on social media. And, that's a mark of the man. He's got his own way of doing things. He keeps his cards close to his chest. Everything's a measured response, but the guard dropped, and it dropped in a really good way on Saturday. All of the, what's Patrick, 35 years of going into raising a child, pursuing a career, and to culminate in that win as well, and the manner in which it was won for the stable. And I'm not sure Willie knew I was second or third, maybe looking on at Patrick, but it was quite a feat as well. And one wag did say to me after Gordon Elliott shed tears of joy and relief after who on the Friday at Cheltenham, Willie's just gone and up the ante again. So I don't know, that's it. But it's good to see, isn't it? It's good to see what it means to these people as well. We're in an era of super trainers. It's all very businesslike, but when it comes down to it, results mean a lot, and there's still an emotion there, which is good to see.
And it shows that the sport and the history and the legacy angle of it is plays stronger than any money or finance or championships. It was wonderful. It was great telly.
And an interesting one, and it was only on our Sporting Life. Dave will have the audio pre-season tour. We're talking about the good days and your dad training, and his dad, Paddy Mullins, got a Trainers Award. I was only a kid there years ago, and Hall of Fame award. And the MC in the day said that it's your Dawn Run, Paddy, was the highlight. No, the mare winning the British Champion Stakes, Hurry Harriet, I think it was late 1960s. That was the highlight of my career. And the MC went, why was that, Paddy? You had to be there. And that stuck with me. And I asked Willie on the occasion that Sport Life were there, why did he say that and not Dawn Run? Tony didn't write Dawn Run. Maybe been taken off her, and that took the joy out for Paddy Mullins.
Absolutely.
So it comes full circle with Patrick riding a winner like that. I'd say that going on from 40 years ago, he knows what it meant to have Patrick in the saddle.
And as someone who didn't study the form for the race that deeply this year, it's going to go down as one of the all-time odd prices, 33-1 for a horse with that profile, isn't it?
Really will.
Sorry,
Especially
Fran.
with the Bobby Joe's trend in recent seasons of being a go-to race for the national the week after the weights are announced. He goes and wins it on the back of a Testis. Yeah, it's quite remarkable. And I unfortunately on Saturday, a few people text me. I tipped the Gavin Cromwell horse, who I should remember, Percival de Galwa, and I said Nick Rocket has gone to a mad price. You better have something on him as well. But I never followed up myself. So there you go. Yeah.
Fran, you're the man to answer this question. What happens to Patrick's percentage? About 40 odd grand, I think. What happens?
In Ireland, and I presume it's in England, it goes to racing charities. So it's to as in a jockey charity. I think it's the Jockey Accident Fund in Ireland, which was set up on the Jockey's Emergency Fund. It mightn't have this 100% right, Graham, but in Ireland, I remember when Katie Walsh won the Kerry National for a friend of mine, that the percentage went to the emergency fund. I suppose to counteract owners putting up amateurs and getting the benefit of 100% of the prize money, and there's a mutual tax, if you like, to support racing charities. Yeah.
Do you know what came to mind after the aftermath of Saturday? I left Aintree just after John Bonn had won on Friday, and just after the cement-footed El Fabiolo had made his latest blunder. And I don't know whether Patrick had been out onto the track, but it was Ladies' Day. It was hopping, absolutely hopping. The weather was great. Hundreds of people having a great time. Patrick's really tall, isn't he? Got to be 6'3". Thin as a stick. Breeches on, boots on, some sort of tunic, military-looking type tunic on. A really, really striking figure, just walking through the crowds, and nobody really recognized him because they were all right on it, you know. I thought it would have been a really lovely still picture of this lone, tall, whip-thin jockey just going through the crowds on Ladies' Day, and 24 hours later, he's a national winner.
What did you make of the race? And your guys at the Sporting Life, what did you make of the national?
I actually said to Shindog, the worst thing we don't want to happen here is Nick Rocket winning. He'll have to grab Patrick afterwards. It'd be mayhem. So needless to say, we managed it. From our perspective, it was fantastic. Traffic was strong. It was a good story. The Mullins interview on ITV made it. We read the human side was shown. But it was also a really good Grand National if you look at the horses. You look at the time form numbers. And this is going to be an increasingly modern trend, isn't it? 166 Nick Rocket, the joint highest since 1995. I Am Maximus 168 in second. Up to third highest since Crisp for a beaten Grand National horse. The actual quality, Grange Clare West third. He's run to a massive figure as well, given the class angle. And it was. It also
sounds like, despite the viewing figure, betting turnover was really
puzzling. Yeah. The turnover.
Crowd at Aintree was up 4 or 5 grand, wasn't it, on National League?
Yeah, I think, and I think with all the headwinds we've got, like. At the minute, it just felt like I thought it was a really good race. I found it fascinating. I thought it was a great race to watch. The way it unfolded, the drama. Like G said, it was more like an older Grand National. There were incidents happening. There was more occurring. And that moment sort of between the second last and the last, where the Mullins Armada set sail and Iroko. I mean, Fran, I'd imagine. Would you want another go, do you think, on the Iroko ride, Fran, if you could have it?
I need to look back at it again, Dave, but read and visually from the distance, I was like he made up quite a bit of ground to get into it. It was probably a doubt about him getting the distance, but what is he? 2 English trained horses in the first 10, and he's an Irish owned one, I suppose. But it's when you look down the result,
Fran, I think it's now a 5-year average of 2 British horses in the first 10 home, which is strange. I should have mentioned this beforehand, Jen, to sort of bring it on you slightly. If there was another little change or tweak that you think might be made or would like to see made, what would it be? Or do you think they've reached a relatively happy medium now, Ed?
I wouldn't change any more. I still would love to see more runners. I'd still think that's the one change that I probably wasn't in favour of. I wouldn't do any more. We can talk about the starts for the other races. They actually got the Grand National one right. And just going to Iroko, Audie, I Am Maximus was even further back than him at one point. That horse ran an incredible race. On the first circuit, AP, who I'm stood next to, is going, he's not enjoying it. I feared this might happen. He's not enjoying it. How he got into it was remarkable. That is some racehorse. And I still think if he'd had that run in the Bobby Joe, he'd have won on Saturday, I think.
DC, I know he didn't get the Gold Cup winner this year, and he'd have been about 7-4 had he turned up, given the handicap marker was going to be right up. But it struck me as well that I Am Maximus, Grange Clare West, the horses who were there, Gold Cup winners, I think they're going to be turning up here under 12 stone for £1 million if there's a long enough gap between the two.
Yeah, depending on the connections, you need the right type of person for that have a go mentality. But no, it's I think in terms of changes, I've no strong views at the moment. I'd have to think a little more, but we're going to have more Grade 1 and Grade 2 level chasers in the race. So if there are any tweaks, it might be to try to create just a small number of winning your in contest that enhance the winter campaign and maybe get the rags to riches angle at least represented in the Grand National again. I think that might be worth putting on the next blank piece of paper they use at the marketing meeting.
Fran, we need to talk about the title now. The defending champion, Willie Mullins, has got a spring in his step. He's got 40 horses, or 40 entries, should I say, on Saturday. You played golf with David Casey earlier in the week. Are the Close Sutton team all in on trying to defend this title now?
Well, I'll give you a little story on that, Dave. Obviously, David Case, myself, are good pals who play golf when we can, 9 holes or go 2 hours, whatever, to get out and get back. Casey shot himself in the foot when he got his handicap at our club last year, 20. So he's got to give me 6 shots. So I've every chance if we ever actually play for money. But it's good fun. But as regards to what will you run over the coming weeks, the owner of Quebec the Board, one of the lads, I'm quite friendly with him, Dave McCarthy in Dubai. And he texted me, just said, I might be going to Ayr on Saturday. And I said, God, I'm playing golf with David Casey. His horse, David's favourite for the Scottish National on Saturday, the one there last year. He's a Market Spring of Willie's. No, the horse won over hurls last year. Sorry, chosen witness. And he said, will you ask David Casey? He's running on Saturday. We got to book flights from Dubai. And I said to David, I will worry about that on Thursday morning. So that's the way Willie rolls. Obviously, it's all on the day how the horses are travelling. But based on what he did last year, he had great success at Ayr. And I think they enjoyed it as well. They were very much welcomed at Ayr, various meetings that they got to, and then the finale at Sandown. So I feel for Dan Skelton. I thought he, in the Racing TV piece with Lydian Ruby, came across very, very well. And, he looked home and hose till the unthinkable happened last weekend. But with momentum and history would suggest that, given the numbers that Willie will throw at it, that he's got a fight in his hands, Dan, and wouldn't be backing against Willie at this stage.
If you are Dan Skelton, GC, if you look there, you wanted that Grand National, counting them coming past the line, aren't you? Looking straight down to the prize money, thinking, Christ, here we go again.
Yeah, it's a strange thing because there's no David Power, 500 grand cash prize or anything. It's a pride and a status thing. But if you've come this far, you really want to win it. So it'll be fun to watch the next couple of weeks. But it's the scary thing is, for not just for Dan, but for everyone, the sort of as Ed touched on, the second wave is better than most people's first. The third and the fourth wave are still mighty powerful. So if you've got tickets for Ayr this weekend, there'll be plenty of Irish runners, that's for sure.
Just one side note in Adrian, we might forget as racing professionals being in the bubble and everything, but Dave, you've been in my hometown of Kilcullen. It's middle of County Kildare. It's a racing mad town, but I think there's about 30 people went across from the town to Aintree on a tour. They just find it easier to get to in and out than going to Cheltenham. But they came back on Sunday morning, a little worse for wear, but they'd already booked their accommodation for next year. So race scoring experience coupled with Liverpool, I think it's a big win if you can take out the politics of the Grand National. And you got to remember the people that go there year in year out are having a good time as well. And I think we forget that sometimes.
And it was visible, Fran, how hard Aintree had tried to improve their facilities and their food and beverage options since last year. So hat tip to them. They put on a good show, but the weather is a massive help, of course.
It was a wonderful 3 days. Ed. Let's talk Muppy Tewton Hill now. He was going to be our poster boy on day one. Ed Chamberlain, where do we go now with him?
Hopefully to Punchestown.
Do you think he'll go to Punch? I can't believe he'll go to Punchestown, but Nicky still says so, doesn't he?
Well, yeah, we'll see. It's not impossible. It was such a fascinating race, that. And Fran will be able to tell you more. I thought Danny Gilligan was brilliant on Wad Who. Turning for home, I mean, it was literally heart in your mouth stuff, the way they boxed in Nico, who then pulls him out, and then that happened. I mean, it was incredible drama, really. Everyone says he jumped well to that point. I mean, that one in front of the stands, he did it there as well. Going slower, he got away with it. Actually made Wadu take off with him. She nearly paid the price for that. Yeah, it was. I feel sorry for the jockeys in this situation. The abuse that Nico de Boinville has had to put up with, by the sound of things, sounds just horrendous. Really, really cruel and unfair. I'm sure he'd like to have things to played out differently, but let's not forget what these jockeys go through. And Fran, he was put in a box. It was just compelling to watch with the two Irish boys putting him in that hole, turning for home. Nico had a big problem, didn't he?
He did, Ed, and I'm going to say this as an ex-rider who got locked up in an 8-runner St. Ledger at Doncaster. So with a 5 furlongs running, I thought Nico was asleep. Danny Gilligan's tactical and that decisive move. I think he's got in a habit of everyone to follow Constitution Hill, and you're getting a free run around it at times tactically as well. You've seen that in Cheltenham when he won that race in January as well, and a little bit of just not being on your game put him in a position that he shouldn't have been in. The fall wasn't Nico's fault. Look, the horse did the same thing that he did at Cheltenham, but that error turning in cast a die in some respects as well. And maybe that's a reflection of the gulf between Irish jump race and English jump race. And at present, all the riders are going around in England in single figure fields for much of the week. And I know it's only a single figure field, but the tactical awareness, I think, of the Irish based riders who riding in bigger fields and be more aware of what's happening and maybe a bit more competitive nature to racing, I think it definitely told there on that occasion as well. And the fall wasn't anything Nico could do about that, but the mistake turning in, letting Danny Gilligan, who was very sharp and very alert, and then Paul Townend sealed the deal by kicking up around him as well when he spied his opportunity, put Constitution Hill in a spot that he shouldn't have been in. And maybe just, outside the top 2 riders in England, I think there's a little bit of a gulf there in tactical awareness at times with the UK riders due to lack of competition at times.
I think that's really interesting. And I sort of echo that, I think. And I wonder why they're so hesitant to show Constitution Hill the front early in a race. Now, if you remember, when he won his Supreme Novices and when he ran away from State Man, he gets to the front, and when he's on song, he piles it on. And here he's hemmed in a steadily run tactical race with the 125-1 outsider still on the bridle at that point. And the splits are quickening from 15.5 to 13.5. And I found that puzzling, the tactics, because he seemed to be a completely uncomplicated ride when he was in his pomp.
Yeah, I agree. I thought they'd have been more positive than they were. And DC for Henderson, the season, Dunbon delivered because John Bon always delivers, but we didn't see Lalame versus Gino. Sadly, we know he's finished. It's just fizzled out from where it looked to be going in sort of January, February time. Slightly,
and it's misfortune, isn't it? It's hard luck for Constitution Hill. It's injury for Gino. He may well regret not having to go with Lalamba on day 1. Waited till Saturday and the ground dried up and didn't want to go on that surface. So, yeah, it has been a bit of a frustrating week or two in some respects. But, as Ed said, they've got the chance to end with a mighty bang at Punchestown. And that big race, that big grade 1 there, if we could get Brighter Days Ahead, Golden Ace, the Statesman, and Constitution Hill, that would be a hell of a hurdle race for the end of the season, wouldn't it?
It was interesting. Willie, after Lossiemouth, somebody said, would she go for the Punchestown? He said, oh no, Stateman's going there. She might do, but he said Stateman's all guns blazing for that. So he's definitely on target.
Listen, just before we move on to one or two things, how much did Lossiemouth have in hand? Because it's interesting to note that she only ran to 151 on the time form scale. So you have to think that, a fit and firing Constitution Hill would have given her a right shake. I know she had a bit in hand, but she had to be livened up and given a few cracks to us over a cracking filly in Wad Who. But it's all ifs and buts. And in the middle of April almost, we still don't know who the best 2 mile hurdler is, 2.5 mile hurdler doing.
The quest will continue through to Punchestown on that one. Fran, let's talk Gaelic Warrior. Patrick had a great Aintree. That felt like a really significant win for him. I've lost the count of times I said he's a 3 mile and he's quick ground, that horse, but nobody listened. But what do you think? Is that redemption for Gaelic Warrior? We're going to see him in King George's and races like that from now?
Yeah, it was spoken about with Willie when we were down the early season as a potential King George horse. Obviously, his season got going later and they went to 2 mile route at Christmas with him, Dave. But he's found his niche. And when he won, was it the 3 mile novice grade 1 at Punchestown? He won over hurdles. He was very, very impressive on that occasion. Obviously, the soft ground in the Arkle last year and a bit of class got him home on that occasion. But with hindsight, he's found his niche, at least on good ground over 3 miles. And one would think he has to be on, his early season target has to be the King George. Flat track, going right-handed. We think he's going to be better going right-handed. The way he jumps and can jump to his right, he didn't as much over the mile course ridden cold. But you'd have to think the King George would be made from based on what we've seen as well. And just shows you whatever happens to Willie's, in December, people are saying he's got a novice hurler worth anything really, and then come to Dublin Racing Festival, he's got a battalion of them. Gaelic Warrior in shape, all that well there again on that occasion, but come to spring, come the hour, come to horse, come to man, it's amazing.
Before the race, I'm thinking, how's this thing 11-4?
Yeah.
But as you say, it's just, you knew you were in trouble. The more the money kept coming, if you'd laid him, and I didn't. He's normally the horse to lay at that price, but I thought, no, he's going to run really well here. The money's telling me that.
Scoop tipped him in the morning. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Really? Why is Paul Townend not riding him then? Are you sure? Scoop was absolutely bullish, wasn't he?
It's quite tragic. And the one thing that struck me with Mullins were that 4 grade 1s on that day. What happened? He's winning races for Simon Minear and Isaac Swade. He's winning for the Donnellys. He's winning for Kenny Alexander. He's winning for Rich Ritchie. Owners who've all enjoyed great seasons, but now they've had days in the sun, grade 1 days in the sun in the spring, just when the shopping started for next year. His ability to keep all these people, and I don't know the people, but you'd imagine egos. Successful business people don't tend to be shy in coming forward. His ability to keep them all sweet when they're not the biggest fish in the pond it's one of his many strengths, isn't it?
He's the master of that, and Fran will know this better than me, but he goes to every dance, Willie, in terms of socially, in terms of things that are laid on. He's there at the weights lunch, and he's just brilliant at it. He's such a mercurial, engaging character. I think the most remarkable thing about those winners, though, Audie, and you can include the 5th grade 1 and the Topham, none of them were favourite. Not one of them was the favourite.
Yeah, the only one that was favourite of the 8 winners was the bumper winner right at the end, wasn't it?
True, yeah. I didn't realise that. At DC, there were a few finer sights in racing than Paul Nicholls with a spring in his step, and it's back. It's been a good spring for Paul, and that felt really significant. Caldwell Potter, Khalif de Burley, Regent Stroll running well. The chest was puffing out again.
Yeah, good on him. Good on him. Matt's not on the show, Matt the Brock today, but he said he can't see Nicholls ever winning another title. I certainly can if things go right. And to get all those horses to peak last week was, because they've all had a few brickbats along the way this season for various reasons, but he's got them all to peak at the right time. They'll need to keep progressing to beat off the Mullins stars next winter, as and when those battles happen. But Caldwell Potter in particular has really been, very few horses won at both festivals. How many? Lossiemouth and him, was it? I think Cheltenham and
2, wouldn't they? Yeah.
And Lossiemouth's Cheltenham win was a penalty kick in many respects, and fortune was on a side the other day. Caldwell Potter has had to win a big time handicap, jumping like a buck, and then show tremendous courage when Jordan's came to call last week. So he's obviously a high quality horse, and he's a very exciting horse to watch because he lets rip at his fences. And
Fran, you talked about the British jockeys struggling to a certain extent. How good is Harry Cobden, particularly from the front like that?
Harry Cobden and James Boner, joy to watch. I think they're just far ahead of the rivals. And Harry Cobden, the jump he got out of the grey horse at last was, was Norman Williamson-esque, Ruby Walsh-esque. It was just all momentum. It was do or die as such, and I don't like using that word in the context of Aintree, but you know, he asked him and he got a winning response for his horse, and that made a difference between winning and losing. He's a great rider to watch, and you know, I'm sure he doesn't have an easy task day to day when things aren't going well with Paul Nicholls. We know he's a hard taskmaster to ride for, but he seems, by all accounts, and from what I'm hearing, well able to deal with him as well. Good days or bad days. He's obviously got a very good awareness of himself and self-confidence as well. And yeah, he'd hold his own anywhere, Harry Cobden. That was a really good ride to watch as well. And I thought one of the most interesting takeaways pre-entry was the phone call of Johnny Burke's agent to Paul Nicholls saying that he was jumping ship to ride for Willie Mullins. I thought it's maybe the way the game has gone, or it's just the shoes on the other foot, but it came good for Team Nicholls as the week went on.
There's always a couple of golden nuggets in any Nicholls interview, and he doesn't mean any harm, but sensitivity is not always the strongest point. And he said after Caldwell Potter, he said, yeah, John Hill's always said he was a 2-miler, but I told him he was a 3-miler. Oh, John.
I thought Harry Skelton's interview was one of the best of the week, actually, when he spoke about, I think they'd come second again to one of Mullins's, and he was walking up the steps and he talked about his admiration for Mullins, but also the determination. It's up to them to catch up. I thought that was quite healthy to hear.
Yeah, I would tell the story, Fran, about Johnny Burke's agent who Burke refused to ring Nicholls, so his agent had to ring Nicholls and say he was getting off for Maneli Kakuna. The agent said he got a barrad, as you would expect, and put it down, then realised he had to ring him back in half an hour to try to get one of his other jockeys on. Fair play, he went in and had a go. He came up empty-handed, but he went in and had a go. So
I'm right in thinking and they've had a fantastic time of it. Fergie and them boys. Oof. They've not had a horse as yet with Willie Mullins, as far as I can recall, have they?
Don't think so.
Oh, they're going all right. They're going all right where they are with Nicholls.
Don't think Sir Alex had a horse there into the Rock of Gibraltar for some reason.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's DT, before we leave, Aintree, one thing that did strike me was it's a wonderful festival. It's going all the time. And you realise when you're watching the racing, that leap from the British horses that go in there with big time form P's and run novice hurdles at the smaller tracks, you think they're ready to take the step up. It's a leap nowadays, isn't it, when you're coming in, even against the Mullins, as you say, B team, with the occasional A-lister thrown in there. And that's to you, sorry, JC.
Oh, sorry, what's the question there?
Just how big a leap it is from the British novice hurdlers.
Listen, there were one or two plus points. Do you know, I thought Gidley Park ran like he's going to be a pretty good horse. He wasn't quite good enough against on Pere Pass, who's tricky. He hung left again, but he jumped and travelled like a horse who's got potential grade 1 quality, I think. Grey Dawning, I didn't think he lost anything in defeat behind Gaelic Warrior, and maybe Betfair Chase on slightly less demanding ground might be the race for him. But the depth now, we've talked about it for years, not months. We're looking at a very, very small core of British horses who have any pretension to beating the best of the Irish, and especially the best of the Mullins battalion.
And just to finish with a word on the National and what we talked about, what do you think we can do more then? How can we increase that viewer number, increase engagement with the race? I understand what you're saying about the National GC, but it still does remain very, very popular. I'm at a loss when you look at the numbers and the share. I'm not sure what more I can do.
Well, exactly. That 5 million is still a hell of a crowd. It's still a hell of an occasion. And having been on this bandwagon, everyone says, don't blame the weather. The weather has been a significant factor. You know that can make, I would say, at least 1 million or 1 million plus of difference. I'm not sure, because I think I look at my son and his pals, and they're sports fans. There's something about it that doesn't resonate with them. I think younger people, by and large, live a more comfortable, somewhat risk-averse life. And I'm talking in terms of punting and wagering and what have you. Their lives are controlled. They have enormous options now in terms of social leisure activities, modern media, etc. I think that crowd will go up again. I think it'll go up when it's a really wet day and everyone's staying at home. In terms of promotion of the race, I think the BHA and various vocal spokesmen and spokeswomen have done a great job, but their reach is not as substantial as those who are anti the project, and that's problematic.
Very interesting.
Fran, we're going to talk about Maidan now, Fran. And if we're looking at the Coolmore Magic Touch, Fran, we're looking at their ability to strike gold. First one in their colours for Believing. So often the bridesmaid in 2024, and just shy of $1 million Dubai dollars snared in that sprint. I mean, they bought her as a broodmare, but it's a good start to her season.
It is indeed, Dave, and what did she cost? 3 million sterling at the sales, from what I can recall, and she got a fair, chunk for back in one go under a very good ride at Maidan from William Buick. The pace was very hot in the front end. You get the feeling that the Japanese horse maybe got racing too early, but he got caught late on by a filly that can finish strongly as well. And she thrives in good ground, fast ground, and one would think at the age of 5, maybe the best yet to come from her as well. And she's bought as a broodmare prospect. She's a Maymass. She'll fit in very well with the Coolmore Band of Stallions as things stand as well. But a good return for them, and a big vote of confidence for George Boy as well to retain her as well. You often get these horses being sold and moving to Ballydoyle. Obviously with Dave Stormby that's there from Australia, different scenario this year, but we have seen ex-UK trained horses spotted at the sales in the past by Coolmore partners switching to Aidan O'Brien as well, and from France as well. This one that's staying with its UK-based trainer, so that's a good vote of confidence for him as well.
And Resolute Racing, a partner in Believing as well. That John Stewart, this American owner who's making a big splash, and he's very, very keen on fan engagement. He's an interesting character to watch this year. He owns the King George winner now, Goliath, doesn't he? Whose figures among the entries for the QE2 Cup in Hong Kong. 9th time lucky for Believing at Group 1 level. We'd been keeping count last year, and she finally got it all right.
GC was a really interesting car, but Forever Young, Romantic Warrior, both beaten. What did you make of their performances?
You have to think that to a major and minor level, they both recoiled somewhat from that enervating duel in Saudi. 6 weeks, they had 6 weeks to recover, but they had a right scrap that day. And Forever Young was definitely not the same horse. He got beaten by Hitshaw and Mixto, 66-1 and 40 in the Dubai World Cup, which is a race that's ailing a bit, I think, these days. It's not attracting the A-listers, and it's producing some pretty odd results. Romantic Warrior gave his all, as he always does, but he didn't have much in hand of Soul Rush on a couple of bits of form, one in Japan last year, and he got snagged right on the line. So it's been a brilliant world tour for him. Winning in Dubai, winning in Australia, etc., but beating a neck in Saudi and a nose at the weekend. And I know what the Hong Kong fans are like. They're passionate, but they tend to think that second sucks. They count wins, and they'll be going home somewhat frustrated by not having won in Saudi and Dubai.
And Fran, it was second to Landagan in the Shima Classic. Also, we're expecting to be a big part of the major races in Europe this season. What did you make for that performance from him?
Look, it was a good run as well, Dave. He's very consistent at the top level as well. He just probably is vulnerable to the likes of a City of Troy or a horse like Danon Desailly, who was probably underrated in the market. Japanese Derby winner, fast ground. He needed a good gallop to aim at on a long straight. He got that again and made on a track in similar layout to Tokyo Racecourse, where he produced his best performance as well. And it just goes to show you that he was the second or third string in the betting as a Japanese runner and a Japanese Derby winner, and to come out and win. The strength and depth to have in turf contests as well as dirt races is massive. And I'd be a bit like Graham. I don't think the Dubai World Cup, since it went back in dirt, I enjoyed it when it's on Tapita, has captured imagination in the same manner that he used to when it was ran in Nadal Chiba. For whatever reason, as you said, maybe Graham, the A-listers aren't travelling as well, and the Japanese tend to have a strong hand, and it came up short against 2 Americans this year. Maybe it's timing this year, it's later than normal to clash with the Grand National and being in April, it didn't have it to itself on a world stage on the day. But the turf racing is firmly holding up in a top level, but the dirt racing for me is a little bit below that.
Frankie was in the news. His people asked the media not to ask any questions away from the subject of horse racing if he won.
Is that right?
Yeah. They said we would appreciate if questions would be kept up. He won a big race, the Godolphin Mile, I think, and he was just touched off in the big one on 40-1 chance mixed though. So a few financial problems for Frankie, but I reckon, just doing a quick divvy up of the prize money at the weekend, I think he trousered just either side of 200,000 sterling. So it's not all bad if you're Frankie at the moment. You'll be seeing him at Royal Ascot, Ed.
Yeah.
Maybe the Derby. There's an American horse penciled in for the Derby, I think.
That'd be interesting. I think we're certain to see him riding on this shores, as you say, GC, this summer. And we need to talk about three jockeys who've retired. Start with Hayley Turner, who you know well, worked with on ITV, and hers has been a groundbreaking career.
He really has. She deserves huge credit for what she's done as a human being and a pioneer in the sport, an inspiration to so many. You only have to listen to the youngsters in the game, your Saffie Osborns and so on, to realise just how important Hayley has been. She's a firecracker of an individual, Hayley. I love her to bits. Great fun, loves her sport, doesn't take life too seriously. And yeah, her Royal Ascot wins have been some of the best moments I've had working in the sport, actually. And wish her the very best of luck with child and whatever happens next. And what she's done for the sport, don't think will ever be truly appreciated, actually. She's been an absolute flag bearer.
Fantastic career for Hayley. Nick Schofield, Fran, he's been around for plenty of time. Lovely guy to talk to. Done many. I used to do the preview evening with him at Cheltenham preview evening for the racecourse went belly up. A great guy, good jockey. I think he's moving on into training, isn't he? He's got his next career sort of mapped out.
Yeah, so I believe, Dave, and I wish Nick all the best. Obviously, we've seen him attached to Paul Nicholls' stable when he was having some of his best seasons alongside Paul, and he's got a good relationship with the owner, Martin Tedham, as well. He's obviously ridden for him various times in a lot in recent times for trainer John Joe Neal as well. And wish him all the best. It's a tough game to be getting into training, but he should, with a good knowledge of working for top trainers, give it a good go.
Alan Johns, GC, bad in style in a race bearing his name was on. That's how it should be for the jockeys.
Yes, absolutely. The journeyman jockey, and I mean that in a positive sense, but a really engaging, very popular character. You could tell that from the reception he got at Foss the other day. And with all those three, Hayley Turner, Nick Schofield, I remember having Nick when he won his first Grade 1 on Melodic Rendezvous in the Tolworth Hurdle then at Sandown in 2013. And there are some toe rags in every walk of life, and there are a few toe rags in racing, but there are some really, you talked about, the Mullins clan, etc. There are some really, really admirable people in the sport, and I'd put those three right up there as well.
We need to briefly talk this weekend. Are you on Newbury with the ITV cameras?
Yeah.
Textbook, as it should be. It's the Covel Scottish Grand National. What's on the Chamberlain shortlist?
Oh, crikey. I'm just looking forward to it. It's the perfect pick you up from Aintree and all the fallout from Aintree. Always really look forward to going there. It's great fun. The punters up there love a bet, love a day out, and they just go for it. It's great. It's a great occasion. And the racing is going to be so much more interesting with Mullins involved in it. All the different racing from Cargisi through to the National itself. In the big race, crikey, what's on the short list? I mean, it's going to be Thursday morning. It's going to be key, as Fran said.
Impossible to know until Willie plays his cards, isn't it? It's just impossible to have any confidence.
Other interesting horses in races. There's a few of them. It's going to be quick conditions, though, for your Surrey Quest and so on. I mean, when did they last have any rain there? They're going to have their work cut out. Walking on Air is going to be an interesting horse. I'm sure he's got another big race in him, but Mullins holds the trump card, and I hope he knows where the winner's enclosure is this time. Last year, we had to tell him where to go. He'd not been there before.
He'll remember this time. GC, how do you find it from a punting perspective? It's that time of year where the jump season, got good quality jumps racing at Air. Newbury's a really good card, a couple of classic trials and meaty handicaps.
The time thing, I'll look at the really good races over jumps at Air. I know she's gone up in the handicap after the county hurdle, but that Cargesi will whiz round there. Oh. She's so fast, and She looks a good quality filly, really good quality filly. But Willie will have a couple more runners. But gradually, I think, like quite a lot of people, I'll be switching back towards the flat, and Newbury has some pretty high class action this weekend as well.
Yeah, because we come back from Ayr and then head to Newmarket on Monday. Yeah. It's Craven meeting Tuesday, Wednesday.
It's a great time of the year. Final word to you, Fran. What are you expecting? What's your pick of the Mullins team if you could have one for that Scottish National, if you've even got one? And B, you on the road for us this week at Jesse Harrington's stable visit. Give us a couple of nuggets from that as well.
Yeah, McDermott, Dave, I would respect as well as the winner of the race last year. He'll be getting back on a good surface. Worried to go on Saturday in the Scottish National. Jessica Harrington, exciting times for them. Hot as Hell and Green Impact, both on course for whichever guineas it falls, depending on ground and what develops in the next 3 weeks from both two very nice colts. Group 1 winning colt in Hot as Hell, who may well go to France for the French guineas, and Green Impact, who looks a sharper, Hot as Hell looks a sharper, more compact type horse than Green Impact. He may well be more suited to France than Newmarket, where Green Impact, owned by Mark Chan, looks likely to go. But exciting times for Team Harrington. And this weekend, Dave, Bedtime Story is entered. Last year's Chesham winner. She's entered on Saturday in that Group 3 race to Curra as well. And then O'Brien, you just get the feeling things are cranking up. He's got Illinois, Jan Bruegel, and a couple of others entered in the alleged stakes as well. If Illinois isn't I was in Ballydoyle a couple of weeks ago. Illinois looked like he was carrying plenty of condition, and so did Los Angeles. Just keep an eye on them to ring pre-race. They could be vulnerable on their initial starts of the season, but flat season really begin to develop now.
It's a fantastic time of the year, and thanks to Fran, Ed and GC for their thoughts on Aintree. And the rest of the topics we've discovered will be back next week. As Ed said, we'll be in the middle of the Craven meeting, which is always an exciting time of the year. We'll know by then if Willie Mullins is at the front in the trainer's title. Probably odds on that he will. Thanks for listening, and as I say, we'll be back next week.
Download the Sporting Life app for the best racing coverage, including live racing blogs, fast results, stable tours, trainer and jockey interviews, expert opinion and tips.